Thank you very much, Ambassador Salam. Mr. Secretary General, thank you for the support you have given to Nelson Mandela and to the movement for freedom and to end apartheid in South Africa and its manifestations throughout the world. To his fellow prisoner and public servant, Mr. Mangeni, thank you for being here. To my friend Reverend Jackson, who served as the United States Special Envoy for Democracy in Africa when I was president, I thank you. I did not meet Nelson Mandela until 1992, in this month, almost exactly 21 years ago today, when, with the then mayor of New York City, David Dinkins, he came to my suite during the Democratic National Convention. He wanted to get a look at the person he might be saddled with working with. He knew he was going to win the election, but he did not know who was going to win the election in America. Hillary, Chelsea, and I began on that fateful day a friendship that has now lasted 21 years. In 1993, Mr. Mandela came back to America to receive the Freedom Medal with his predecessor, who worked with him in the peaceful transformation. In 1994, he came alone as president of South Africa for his first state visit here. We worked together closely when I was president and he was president. I am one of the few people alive today who met him in the last 20 years who has actually seen him in a less saintly role. On rare occasions, he would even get angry with me when he disagreed with our positions. But what I know is his heart was so big and his humanity so great, we often had trouble keeping our official roles apart from our personal friendship. This speaks well of him. After he left office, we began to work together on the problem of AIDS. There was then no global fund on AIDS, TB, and malaria, no PEPFAR program, no UNITAID program, no money. In 2002, at the International AIDS Conference in Barcelona, Mr. Mandela and I were co-chairs of a group of former world leaders who were just going around rattling a cup begging for money for AIDS. But he did more, which gives meaning to this day of service. He brought up to the podium when we closed the conference a young woman, not from South Africa, but from one of the small island nations in the Pacific, and announced that he would personally pay for the treatment to keep her alive. It was his service. At the time, in all the developing world, there were only 200,000 people getting AIDS medicine to stay alive, when all people with AIDS in the rich countries were getting it. 130,000 of those people were in Brazil. Most of the rest were in Thailand because both countries had the capacity to produce medicine and therefore could bargain for cheaper prices. Madiba looked at me and he said, "You ought to do something about that." And the head of the Caribbean nation's efforts against AIDS, the Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis, who is Prime Minister again, Dr. Denzel Douglas, came up and said, "You should help us. We have no discrimination problem. We have no stigma problem. We have a money and organization problem." And so we all began. Today, more than 8 million people are getting medicine. 5 million in 70 countries off contracts we negotiated. It was my great honor, because he inspired me to do this, to renegotiate the prices South Africa pays for AIDS medicine and they saved over $250 million a year, all of which they put back in to caring for people with AIDS. That is the power of his example. Mr. Secretary General, just a few days ago you had Malala Yousafzai here. And she said, among other things, that when she was shot, the terrorists thought they would change her behavior, but nothing changed, quote, except encouraged. And she said she even wanted education for the sons and daughters of the Taliban and all terrorists and extremists. Then, those of you who heard her know that she cited her influences in life, including Nelson Mandela. Over the years, I have given a lot of thought to why he has had such a unique impact, apart from the power of his personal sacrifice. Gracia Michel asked me, and in the UK, Sir Richard Branson, to offer people who wanted to give modest contributions to preserve Mandela's legacy and to keep his work alive, to give them in America to our foundation, and we're going to remit 100% of the money to the Mandela Center for Memory. In a few days, I'll be in Africa, and our foundations are going to sponsor an event together. This is what I think it comes down to. Mandela's 95 years teach us 3 lessons. First, you can't free anybody else, and you can't serve anybody else unless first you free yourself from bitterness and hatred and resentment and the paralysis they bring. Mandela walked out of prison after 27 years a greater man than he went in. Every day was a struggle. I could see it in his eyes even after he became president. Some old demon would rise up when somebody would do or say something stupid, but he fought it every day. I once told him that I got Chelsea up early in the morning to watch his last walk to freedom. You remember, it was early in the morning here in America, and he was walking down that dirt road to get in the car to drive out the fence. And I said, you know, Mandela, you're a very great man, but you're also a canny politician. It was smart to bring your jailers to your inauguration, to put the leaders of opposition parties into your government. But tell me the truth. When you were walking down the road the last time, didn't you hate them again? He said briefly, I did. I'm old enough to tell the truth. He said, I felt hatred and fear. But I said to myself, if you hate them after you get in that car, you will still be their prisoner. I wanted to be free, and so I let it go. He said, people can take everything from you. I lost my family, the chance to see my children grow up, the best years of my life. They can take everything except your mind and your heart. Those things I decided not to give away. And he looked at me and smiled and he said, neither should you. That is a lesson that every human being on earth had better learn sooner or later. The grace of it embraces every friend he ever had. The second thing that he showed us was that our freedom to serve is limited when other people are not free and empowered. Mandela freed South African whites by creating an environment in which all people could participate. A minister friend of mine went to the airport once in Johannesburg because it was the only place where he could say a brief word of greeting to President Mandela. And he told me he saw Mandela walking across the airport terminal when he saw this young mother and her beautiful, blonde-haired, blue-eyed daughter about 6 years old. And he went up and shook hands with the child and said, "Do you know who I am?" She said, "Yes, you're Mr. Mandela. You're my president." He said, "Yes, and if you stay in school and you work hard and you learn a lot, someday you could be president of South Africa." Think about that. He was imagining, after 300 years of discrimination, after all the violence and suffering of apartheid, that someday reconciliation might be enough, that the white minority might once again legitimately be competitive for the presidency if everybody's mind and heart was in the right place. Almost no one would do that on instinct. He wanted all of us to be free. And finally, as I have seen and benefited from in this last 12 years, he proved you don't have to be in public office to serve the public. And that is what this day is all about. That is what the Mandela Center is all about. And though he is old and frail and fighting for his life, though over the last couple of years, as Chelsea and Hillary and I saw on 2 visits to Kuna last year, he doesn't hear so well, and he walks with the benefit of an elevated walker. What is in his heart still glows in his smile and lights up the room through his eyes. None of us has to be in public office to be of public service. So, first we must free ourselves. Then we must free and empower others. Then we must serve as a way of life, not as a route to office. Those are the lessons that every person on earth can learn, embrace, and live by. Thank you very much.